welcome to the Utah Puck Report. I'm your host, Jay Stevens. Today we're going to do some deep diving into a coach that we were lucky enough to have in Utah for a while, and you've since gone and spread your wings a little bit more. Rikard Grönborg. Rikard, tell me a little bit about, first off, let's talk about you as a player, where you grew up, and then lead us up to St. Cloud.
Oh boy, do we have time for that?
Sure.
Long story. No, I grew up in the southern part of Stockholm. Born and raised in Huddinge, which is a suburb of Stockholm. Very heavily a big hockey community, I would say. So you really didn't have much choice but play hockey in that community, and played from little squirt all the way up to the pro team there. Year 3 in the pro team, I was about 18 years old, or I have an opportunity to go out and play for Montreal Canadiens tryouts. And they had the junior team, Verdun Canadiens, right there. And then I had a tryout there. And when I was at a tryout, there was a lot of universities from the U.S. watching those tryouts. And, based on that, I got some opportunities to go and play U.S. college and end up in St. Cloud State. Play college hockey at St. Cloud State as I ended up in the U.S. So that was kind of the short version of it. Was that ever a dream of yours, like growing up, to play college hockey? Is that a thing in Sweden where you talk about going to the U.S. and playing college, or was the plan to just play NHL? Like, what was the childhood dream? Well, if you look how old I am, we weren't really exposed at all to college hockey in Sweden. There's a little bit of NHL once in a while on TV. That's about it. Rest of it was like our local leagues were the guys you were looking up to, the guys that were playing those top leagues in Sweden, and obviously world championships, and see once in a while an NHL player come and play for Sweden and the world championships. That's more or less the only exposure you had to hockey in North America at all. I grew up with 2 TV stations, TV1 and TV2, and didn't really play a lot of NHL hockey or any North American hockey there. So there's a lot of obviously exposed to Swedish hockey and European hockey more than anything else. And so it was a kind of a brand new world open up for me by watching the university, and you actually have an opportunity to go to school at the same time as you're playing hockey, and that's kind of a little bit unheard of for me growing up. So that was an unbelievable opportunity that was presented to me, and obviously I'm super happy that I took that route of going to play college hockey. What comes after St. Cloud for you? I went back home and played a couple more years, and back then the money in the European leagues weren't very good. So after 2 years of playing back home in Sweden, I had still didn't finish my bachelor's degree when I went back. So that was kind of weighing heavy on me that I needed to go back and finish school. If I didn't do it now, I'm probably never going to finish that. So that was more or less an opportunity for me to go back and finish my degrees. And I made a decision after I played 2 more years in Sweden to go back and go back to school. And again, a very, very solid and well thought through decision on my part. Oh, nice. You don't hear that a lot. I try to encourage everybody I can to finish that degree, because if you don't finish it now, like, life just keeps getting in the way. I just had that talk last week with one of my young firefighters. Okay, so you finished your degree, and now it's time to become Coach Grönborg. Is that how it happened? Not really, to be perfectly honest. I had no plans of becoming a coach or get into coaching and really stay in hockey. I was kind of a finished chapter for me. But when I got back to St. Cloud, the seniors that year were actually freshmen my senior year. So, of course, I'm going to go down to the arena and talk to those guys. And at that point, I met up with the coach, and he started talking to me and visit a little bit. And he goes, you're a pretty smart player. You should, why don't you come down and help us out, be a grad assistant here at St. Cloud? And I was going, well, do I have time for that? Because I add on a lot of classes because I wanted to finish my degree. But somewhere back in my head, it's like, it'd be a good transition for me to get back into normal life. And that's kind of what happened too. And there was like a new world open up to me, because again, I wasn't planning on becoming a coach or anything, but it was kind of a nice transition of be done with playing hockey and see it from a different perspective. And that's exactly what happened. So you help out with St. Cloud. What's next? What's your next offer? Well, I was there, finished off my degree, and at that point of time, I was okay. What's the next step here? And I've been in contact a little bit with a coach that coached at UW Stout, which is University of Wisconsin Stout, just across the river there in Wisconsin. Is a satellite school of Madison, and they're starting out a brand new program of Division III. And he offered me, hey, why don't you come over here, coach with me for a couple of years, get a master's, and then go out and get back into the real world. And I was going, okay, I was a pretty good student, so that's a great opportunity. So I did that for 2 years. Started that program. They got an NCAA stamp of approval my first year. And we played Division III hockey there and coached there and helped them out. And at the same time getting my master's degree. So it was a perfect transition from going from grad assistant, finish my bachelor's, and going to do my master's degree. And so I did it for 2 years.
Do you think if it weren't for hockey, you would have stayed in and got a master's degree? Or did hockey kind of help you say, hey, I'm going to stay here? These two things just line up perfectly? Or would you have just gone back to Sweden with your bachelor's?
Yeah, a little bit. I was obviously having a break of 2 years of playing professionally in Sweden. It kind of got me really, I really missed the student environment. Go to classroom every day, learn something new every day, and I missed that by just playing hockey. So this was a great opportunity and further my education. At the same time, being involved in athletics, and I coached women's soccer in the summer and men's hockey in the winter. So I got exposed for all kinds of different levels of the games, and and further myself in that sense. And I got really interested in leadership, and that's the reason I went to UW Stout too, because they had an opportunity of getting into leadership classes. We had management classes, and that's what really my master's degree is leadership. So it's kind of went hand in hand in a sense of doing the sport thing and the same thing, getting into management and do a regular job. It was a great 2 years for me to be at UW Stout.
Did you have big plans of going off and being a leader of a Fortune 500 company at this point? Like, all right, this is it. I got my master's. I'm not doing hockey anymore. I'm gonna go and be, outside hockey successful. Or was it like, all right, no, I'm in. Does the love of the game keep you in, or do you kind of want to spread your wings and get out?
Well, after 2 years there, I kind of felt that I wanted to reward myself for job well done. And so there were some people in USA Hockey that kind of helped me out. Well, some junior opportunities, but somewhere in the U.S. They had 3 junior A leagues there, and there was a job opening up in Great Falls, Montana. They offered me the job, and making $18,000 a year, actually making monies instead of paying money to go to school. So there was, I was poured out already, so I might as well go there and spread my wings a little bit. But I never had a thought I was going to make a career. I was more of, okay, get this out of my system, be a head coach for the first time. And, you remember the junior leagues back then, you did everything. Everything from, I was only a full-time guy, so I was, more sharpening, the skates and writing the media releases. I did more or less did everything. And I think that's a good way of getting into it and appreciate people working, especially the level I'm at right now. I appreciate people around myself to do different things, So, that was a great experience. I was there for 3 years, and we did some really good stuff there. And I told you a story earlier before we went on broadcast here about that level. It was the community that stood behind you, the smaller community, but the TV was there, showed interest in the players, and most of those players were based from Midwest, where I went to school because I had my connections there. So it was a good way for me to get into becoming a head coach, but also appreciate and understand the different functions of the team. So
that's kind of funny. I had Bill Armstrong, the GM for Utah, on the show a few weeks ago, and we talked about like the importance of being that guy. It's one thing to be an NHL guy and you're an NHL player and now you're an NHL coach, but for some guys to go back and to go to leagues. What was that, the Mountain West League at the time? Is that what it was called, or
AWHL, America West?
America West, right?
Yeah.
But when you go to a league like that, or when you're with the Utah Grizzlies, or one of these teams where you just have to do everything, you really do. That's kind of like a master's program in itself, because you learn every little aspect of running a team, scouting, coaching, being the equipment guy, being the PR guy. and all of it. And then as you grow, you kind of know what to expect. And it's like, it's a well-rounded transition as you climb up the ladder, because you appreciate all those people that do those jobs for you down the road. So it's just interesting to hear you say the same thing, that you appreciate those times.
Yeah, and it's a great, learning tool for yourself. And I just refer back to appreciate people that doing those jobs that I was doing too, and understand there's a value in that, instead of going straight to being head coach and that's the only thing you've been doing. You do now this, you're taking those steps and becoming who we are. And so again, it was a fun way for me to get involved in that. And we can go on road trips, for example, and there's like, okay, the guys have no sticks, so we got to stop somewhere on the way up to Canada or something, and the $18,000 I had, I have to pay for sticks because we have no stick budget, things like that. And I think it makes you a little bit humble, but at the same time, you also appreciate the game, and at that level, I think also the people around that helping out. You have the billet families and everything else, and it's a pretty big operations that help you out and be supportive of it, of course.
So when does Utah come into the picture for you?
That's pretty interesting. It actually refers back to the Great Falls days, because I get to know some people there. And when I was in Spokane with the Spokane Chiefs in the Western Hockey League as assistant coach, and year 2 they made the transition of changing the coaching staff there. I really didn't have any job, and it was kind of clocks was ticking. There was like no offers out there at that point in time, because it was so late when Spokane made a decision. So I've been helping the guys that's setting it up, and there was one guy from Great Falls that came down, and I helped him out with the curriculum. I helped him out with the budgets, because I really didn't have anything to do that summer. So I helped him out with all that stuff of setting that up when he came down and was part of this organization. So, when I didn't have a job, those guys down here said, why don't you come down to Utah for a year, help us set the organization up here, and after that you move on. So I kind of took that offer, and that's the reason I ended up in Utah, to be honest with you. It was more of a situational thing. And if you look at the pattern of what I've been doing, it's kind of not spur of the moment things, but things that kind of happens, and I seize the opportunity and do something new.
I think that's, for a lot of coaches, it has to be that way, because it's, I compare it to this, it's same thing in radio. I've been a radio DJ for a long time, and I thought it was awesome. I was young, and I get called into my first ever business meeting. I think I was 13, 14 years old. I'd been on the radio for a little while, and I was pretty excited to have my first business meeting. Well, I didn't realize they were going to fire all of us in that meeting. They just said, you know what, we're changing direction. We're no longer Power 99. We're now B98.7, and we don't need all you jocks. So you're all gone. So then all of a sudden you're like, well, what's next? Because you're so comfortable. You're so into the brand. And like, it's the same thing with coaches. You live and breathe for that brand, for that team. And then all of a sudden the GM or whoever says, nah, we're going to go a different way. And now it's not like you were planning on it. You didn't have your resume ready, and you're looking for, because you're loyal, right? You bleed for that. And it's just so weird. And everybody I talk to is like, yep, I got fired, and then this was the next best opportunity. It's not like you can pre-plan all that stuff. So you end up in Utah, and that's kind of where you and I met. And you had such an influence. How long did you coach here?
Actually, 5 years.
5 years.
So that year it ended up to 5 years, and I really enjoyed it here. I loved it here. Obviously, I met my wife here, and
who lives on the same street as us. We found out.
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of became a part of the family for me. I felt so welcome down here, and we started out with one team of 25 players. I think when I left, there's like 250 players involved in that organization. We have 5 full-time guys. And just the involvement of I think we made a pretty good impression here in Utah. It was really hard for me to leave, but at the same time as I moved down from Spokane to come down to Utah, at that point in time there was a movement in the Swedish Ice Hockey Association that they wanted to have more influence from North American hockey, and the guys there involved. Oh yeah, I remember Rikard as a player. Now he'd been over in North America for a long time as a player and as a coach. Let's bring him back. And he can help us out in the organization. And so they came and recruited me. And so I had a pretty good gig in the sense of I was here coaching the oldest team, the 18-year-olds, and as well as being the director of the organization.
And then I can go to World Championships and help out the World Championship teams. Everything from under 18, under 20 to the national team, both in World Championships and the Olympics for the national team. So I had a pretty good gig in the sense of working, having a daily work in Utah. I love Utah. I love Salt Lake when I lived here. Obviously, I feel like I'm part of the family here, as well as going back to my old family of Swedish ice hockey and helping them out there and flying into all those fun tournaments and work with the best in the world. And what a great way to learn from those guys, right? So I did it for 5 years.
There's a few things you said right there that I don't want to just glaze over, because I mean you coached World Juniors, U18s, U20s, you coached in the Olympics, and the one thing you said that really kind of surprised me is that Sweden wanted North American influence in their hockey. How big is Sweden? Compare it to the U.S. How big is Sweden?
Well, you can compare it to U.S. and Canada. I think the amount of players you have in the U.S. and Canada is very similar right now. I think U.S. actually passed Canada in the last couple of years of participants. But, if you have one player in the U.S. or in Sweden, you have 10 in U.S. and Canada. So it's obviously divide everything by 10.
But that's what blows my mind, is because Sweden doesn't have as many players normally, but still has probably more NHL players per capita. Like, Sweden's known for having phenomenal hockey players, and the skill level. That's the one thing. When I think of you as a coach, I think of a guy that's coming in and teaching the high skill and the high IQ. And for a country like Sweden to say, "Oh, we want some North American influence," to me that just means they wanted more checking.
Well, that was a part of the deal, and when everything started a few years before I got involved in the association, was that they didn't have very much success, especially under 18, and it felt like they weren't producing the players. So when we going into the World Championships, we felt like the skill level we had the hockey IQ, we felt, but at the same time what they missed is a little bit of play along the boards, play in front of a net, the competition in that sense, because we're playing in bigger rinks in Sweden. And it's not really on that our nature to play aggressively in those areas, because we don't do it in Sweden. So they want to expose the players at an early age of this is the international hockey. This is if you want to make the step up, go to the NHL, you have to know these areas as well in order to be successful to take the next step. So that's kind of was my involvement. That's how I got hired in the first place. And then obviously I got involved in the coaching and obviously furthered myself in that sense. But that was the thought of why don't we grab the best from the international hockey, why don't we grab the best from North American hockey and then mix it with the Swedish style. So it was a fun assignment to get, obviously, and we've done pretty well at the world stage, and I'm pretty happy to be part of those teams and also part of that development for sure.
Yeah, because Sweden you're always one of the favorites now. And then, as a goaltender and looking at where goaltenders come from, if you just look at the NHL, I know we did it last season. Before the season started, we kind of looked at every goalie in the NHL, and there are tons of Swedes and Finns. It's crazy with, again, per capita, the player talent level coming out of Sweden is unreal, and I know you have a part in that.
Yeah, no. Again, for 10 years, I started with the age group of 87s to be part of our under-20 team, and then I think for 10 years straight, I was with the U20s and most of them with the U18. So everyone between 187, Nicholas Bäckström, that type of, until the 97s, so, there's quite a few players, obviously, going that route of the national teams and moving on. So I got exposed to those guys already when coming in our program at 16 years old and see how they develop into world players. And for me, it's what a great privilege to be part of their development. And I learn as much from them as hopefully I can teach them a few things a few tricks before they get move on. So there was a great a fun development. Like I said, I developed that in that environment as much as they did, and be part of that is again what a huge privilege.
Yeah, it's been so cool to watch your career. Just the interactions we had here. You're well respected. You did a lot for a lot of players here. And then it was just fun to watch, like, watching World Juniors and seeing you on the bench and stuff. Be like, hey, I know that guy, because it's just cool. Like, we know the Americans and stuff, but I think I just hold the Swedish team in a different regard. Like, there's just the skill level is so much fun to watch, offensive and defensive. The defensemen you guys have, you talk about, getting better on the boards and getting better in front of the net. It just blows my mind because Swedes are always pretty tight in front of the net. I've always been impressed with their defensive structure. Talk to me a little bit about the guys that you influenced in Utah. Name some names of guys that you helped, and who did you have the most fun coaching around here?
Oh boy, there were so many guys. I think it'd be wrong for me to just mention one guy that I coached. There was like a mixture of players because we brought in the UA team we had. We brought in some out of state players here to further and so we could be a little bit more competitive for the especially California teams but about 50-50 was local Utah kids and guys from out of state, the smaller states around here. So that was there's a lot of players, and we had some success, not just winning games and everything else, but we're competitive right from the start. But I've been fortunate enough to see some players to move on to further, everything from college and some are signing pros and moving on. And as it is right now, for next year with Tappara, we have two import players from North America, both of them from Utah.
Yeah, so you've got Halloran and Brickley next year.
Yes.
And you coached Halloran this year.
Yes, I did. And obviously there's a connection there. There's a reason they're there. And, we brought in Nick. I never coached Nick. He was part of the organization. And I didn't coach Daniel either, but they were part of the organization. I think they were 7 or 10 years old when I left. So, but it was obviously the imprint we made and with the whole organization. And I kind of been following a career. I coached Nick's older brother, Alex, for 3, if not 4 years. Here in Utah, and he moved on and had a pretty good career of going to college and Division I and juniors up in Canada. So I kind of been following, Nick's career a little bit from outside. Obviously, Brickley is kind of funny because when I coached my first, World Championship, but being a head coach in first World Championships in Cologne, 2017, he was part of the U.S. team. So that's kind of a small world. I saw,
yeah.
I remember him as this little kid that was playing hockey, was a pretty good hockey player. And suddenly it's this guy that's bigger than me, it was fun to see him there and doing real well and representing U.S. at that stage, being a local Utah kid and everything else. So I've been following, these guys' career and a few other guys' career that come in from this program and see how to develop and feel proud of being part of this organization and Utah hockey. It's kind of fun now when we're looking for a couple of imports and, we probably give them offers that could have probably made more money somewhere else, but they really want to play in our environment and everything else. We have a, great team and a chance to win every year. So they kind of, stars align a little bit and both those guys are with our team.
So what team are you coaching right now?
It's Tappara. It's a Swedish or Finnish Liga. And there's a few reasons I'm there. One big thing for me is kind of challenging the truth. Because everyone's talking about, why are there now no European coaches in the NHL, for example? That's a big, especially European hockey, because 30% of the players are from Europe.
Yeah.
And I said, well, we don't do anything differently here. In Swedish league, they're more or less old Swedish coaches, and in the Finnish league, they only have had Finnish coaches for 16 seasons before I showed up.
Wow.
So I was kind of challenging that a little bit. Tappara is a top team. I've been following them for many, many years. They're producing tremendous players, great ownership. Actually, one of the owners and sitting on the boards is an old player of mine. So
really?
That's a little bit of connection there as well. I coach them in juniors. And also, we have NHL owners like Barkov is a big owner of our team. And so this is stable ownership. They presented this idea of we want some outside influence. We want some a little bit more North American style. Obviously, with the success with the Swedish teams and everything else, we want to bring that in and kind of change the hockey a little bit in Finland. So that was their vision that sold me on it. And suddenly I'm sitting on the plane and go up to Finland, which I never thought I was going to be coaching in Finland. But I wanted to challenge. If you look at my track record, I've been challenging different truths out there and the coach should do and moving the coaching career. So this is kind of maybe not a natural step, but for me it was a pretty natural step for sure.
Did you guys so Nick and Brickley played together the year before last. They won the championship. How did the season go this year? You were the coach the entire year, right? Mm-hmm. How did this season end?
Well, we won the regular season. It was kind of different, just the input. So they changed in the coaching staff, and it was kind of a mutual parting, if you like, because the year before they won last 2 years. And they also won the Champions League, which is obviously the best team in Europe, the year before I showed up. So you're really taking a team that's, where you go from here kind of a deal. But we have the vision what kind of hockey we wanted to do something a little bit different than they've been doing in the past and everything else. So you taking over that team, like in Zurich, when I took over the team in Zurich, they were in 9th place the year before. You took them to first place in 1 year. So, you going in and suddenly the only thing you can do is more or less do better,
Right.
Versus here, you're already the top team, the top dog. So how do you go in and
if you lose,
exactly.
Everybody just blames you, or?
Yeah, well, more or less, I mean, there's the easy way to do, obviously, but, so if we end up in 2nd place, we're still a very good place. We're still not as good as the last year's team, right? So, but we did real well. Obviously, we won the regular season. We won the playoffs as well. So we're the champions, and and we were doing it with the vision of changing the game as well. So if you look into hockey before, it was very effective and did a lot of good stuff, but now we changed it quite a bit and still can be successful. And that was the whole point of doing this thing from the management and ownership and everything else. And what a great challenge and what a great result. It was fun to work with these guys. Going in with a brand new coaching staff as well. They're all Finnish coaches. Learned a lot from those guys. And the dynamics in the locker room. And in Switzerland was obviously a lot of languages in the locker room. And by the same time, we're coaching in English. And same thing in Finland, we're coaching in English. But I have a Finnish coaching staff that can help me with communicating in obviously in different languages as well. So it's a little bit more of a challenge when I have Europe and all the languages versus here. It's like one language,
right.
Maybe two if you're from Quebec, but in North America. But this is it was a fun journey to do, and we have a brand new arena downtown, 13,000 seat arena, tremendous support from the local fans. We have another team in our league from the same town, so it's a great rivalry. We have locker rooms right next to each other, and we'll be playing obviously sellout crowd and everything else. And we were number 1 in the league, and they were number 2. So what a hockey mecca in Finland to be in Tampere right now.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. It's incredible. I just got to let you know too. We did have Alex and Nick Halloran on the show a couple years ago. And we talked about what influenced him and what helped, Alex first get out of Utah. And the first thing he said was you. He said that the time he got to play with you is what got him, actually taught him how to play hockey. And that's something we've missed here. And that's, you say you're going to Finland and you're changing a little bit of their structure and their culture. You've coached here. You saw, sadly, we haven't made a ton of progress as far as it's still parent-driven politics a lot of times. And if your kid doesn't make the team, instead of just having them work harder and get better during the off season, you just go and start your own team or your own league. So as a coach that knows how to change structure, if you just think back to what Utah was back then, what would be your advice to those who are listening right now on how to fix Utah?
Well, what I tried to do was to merge organizations, because there were two really big organizations with youth hockey.
And which organization? I don't think we've said it out loud yet. Who did you coach while you were here?
With the Regulators, Renegades, and we turned into Chatters as sponsors.
Yeah.
And the other organization was Grizzlies. And my biggest thing is I try to merge those two. Why don't we unify and then we can have a bigger organization. We can spread out the knowledge a lot better. We can have more competitive daily work, because I think the daily work needs to be competitive, especially for the players. So if you have, say you have, 15 good players in Utah, really good players that can move on to the next level. So why have 7 here and 8 there? Why not let them play against each other every day? And because that's how you get better, right? And then, go traveling around the U.S. and Canada and in different tournaments and try to further themselves that way. So, and then we can also retain more players here in Utah versus they going somewhere else and play, minor league hockey. So that was kind of my goal. The 5 years of was here, but there's so much tradition of, this guy did this 10 years ago. So, and this guy said this 15 years ago. I was like, I really don't care right now. What's best for the kids,
Yeah.
Because it's so easy as a parent to just look at your kid, and I get it. I'm a parent myself. Of course you do, but my job was trying to go outside that because, I didn't have any kids in the organization. So I was always, my mind was to try to get Utah hockey better, did we do a lot of progress? No, we did some progress, but I wish we could have done more during those 5 years. And obviously it was tough for me to leave, even though I had a great opportunity to go over to Sweden and coach the national team. It was really tough for me to leave here. I loved it here. My family was here, really. And I felt that we were so close of getting there with the hockey and youth hockey, and also be very competitive. And that generation with Daniel Brickley and Nick Halloran, we had some really good young players coming up. So it was a tough decision, but I had to make it for myself in order to see how far I can push myself in coaching. And I think a lot of players feel the same way. They have to leave the state in order to become a really good player, and I think that's too bad.
Yeah, I think that's the part we need to fix, and I think. Obviously there's change coming, and I'm hoping the right people hear these things and the right people get put in those positions. I do have a little bit of influence in this now. I actually have somebody's ear that's running it. And the thing I've been talking about the most is basically eliminating parents from involvement. Bring your kid, drop them off, and then we'll take care of the rest. And, obviously I want them to come and cheer or whatever, but, I ran hockey camps here for 19 years. And we'd have parents bring their kids and then lean over the glass and yell instructions to their kids while I have paid coaches who play in the NHL, who are some of the top, prospects who've been living and breathing hockey every minute. And they know this position, especially goaltenders. I had Jordan Parisi and Troy Davenport, these guys that playing NCAA or playing NHL. And I have parents still trying to talk over them. And I was like, this part needs to change. That part has to go away. And I get it. You want to help your kids. And like, again, I did the same thing. I coached my son for a long time. But what we're looking for now is I'm just going to say that you already know this, but I'm going to say this so that everybody else hears this part on this podcast, is that we want one travel team out of the state of Utah. Right now we have multiple. We have what are they called? They're not the Regulators anymore. Are they Regulators? Wasatch Renegades now? We have Wasatch Renegades. It's our only Tier 1 team. So it's the remnants of what you were coaching. They had Evan Stofflet coaching for a while, which was huge for them. I don't know who's coaching now, but we still have that program. And then we have the Grizzlies. And then we have the Dogs. And then we have the Eagles. And then we have one out of Ogden. Now we have a new one starting out of Provo. So, which is okay if you do these teams are going to play against each other in the state. And then we're going to take the best players out of those organizations and make all-star teams out of that. And then they can play against each other. And then the all-stars out of that all-star group become Team Utah. And that's our Tier 1 program. Because in the meantime, we just keep diluting it. Every time, and I did it when I was coaching. I was coaching the Eagles, and I thought I had this phenomenal team. I had Nick Halloran. I had Tegan and Net. I had, we had all the best players, Faubert and all these guys. And then Park City said, you know what, we're going to do it this year too, and we'll waive the fees for the best players that we get. Well, that decimated our team. We had one team that would have been competitive AAA or Tier 1, and all of a sudden it got diluted. And when those couple players left, then they were like, well, Eagles aren't going to be as strong. I think the Grizzlies are going to be stronger. So then I lost 2 players of them. So I went from having 14 legitimate AAA players to having 6. And then somebody else had 4, and then somebody else had 4. And, it's sad to see it get diluted like that.
Well, I think that you said something they reacted on right away, because if you have, say, 15 or 20 good players in the state and they compete against each other every day, you don't think they're going to get better. That's the environment you need to settle in. Another thing was the fees, right? So what I tried to do was because they cost money to play hockey, and especially when you need to travel outside the state. And what I tried to do is set up sponsorships for the people that couldn't afford it and make it affordable. And that's was part of the job for those 5 full-time coaches I had on the organization, was to go out and try to get those sponsorships. And that's the reason why we get chatters on board in order to put in quite a bit of money into it to disperse. I mean, it's easy and I think that's the biggest one. Find a reasonable way, but create an environment where the players really want to be, and unify those powers and knowledge, I should say, of the coaches and work together. And that's a big key, because there's a lot of egos around there. And one of the most important thing I did when I came in to Utah Hockey was sitting down with the parents and trying to describe them the way and the vision I had of the organization. I said, if you want to be successful, we need to work together, and you as parents are having a huge role in this. And it's lays on you a little bit in the sense of trusting us in the hockey part of anything else. I can have any dialogue and discussion with you guys, but I'm going to stick up for my coaches if it comes down to hockey decisions. But I could be the link between the parents and the coaches, and I really try to be that, absorbing the parents and make them understand. Had frequent meetings with them, explain the process of what's the next step, instead of feeling that the parents were enemies or anything like that, or working against them. I wanted to bring them into the family. I did the same thing with the national teams, actually, with the Swedish national. I invited parents under 18 and had parents discussions on how they can help the players on becoming the next level, and try to get them on board and make them understand what we were all about. So I think to be successful, I think education is going to be huge. I think whatever happened 10 years ago is not important right now. We need to move on. Find those people that really want to further hockey and work together in that sense. I think it's going to be hugely important. And I think we're almost there. When I left, was very close to that kind of family, or whatever you want to call it. And there's also, you got to understand that there's choices that the parents need to make if they move somewhere to another state or like that. Whatever you feel is best for your son or daughter to move somewhere else, we respect that, and not hold it against them, because they're always trying to make whatever the best decision for them, and be happy that you had them for 1 or 2 years, So I think there's a lot of check marks there, and there was a lot of good people here that I just wish if I could get them to work together a little bit more, we would have been there. Especially last couple of years I was here.
Yeah, and I think that's the case now too. There are a lot of good people and a lot of good people involved. What's your take on year-round hockey players for youth guys like 8 to 12 years old? Are you all in on play hockey all year, or do you want to play soccer and baseball and or just taking some time off?
I'm a firm believer in playing a lot of sports, exposed to a lot of sports. I believe in create the athlete first and hockey player second. To me, have the athlete. I think this is hugely important. I don't mind if kids want to skate in the summer and further their hockey career, if that's the interest, that's what they want to do. But I think you as a parent, if you want to have the athlete, you need to expose them to different sports, and I think that's really, really important, and not just for hockey's sake or for hockey education, but also for them, not just there's only one thing they're holding on to. They need more stuff to be involved in, and I think just the balance in the kid's life is better that way as well, and meet different people and all that stuff, because the social aspects of this is huge, obviously.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think it's good to diversify. I ran into a lot of problems with that as a coach too, where I would allow it, and a lot of parents would get mad that I was allowing it. But I also had a son that was playing 2 sports that it kind of forced me to allow it a lot. But I also saw the positive sides of that. You mentioned that there are currently no NHL coaches that are Swedish.
No European coaches actually. You have some assistant coaches, and most of them are old NHL players, and being here and obviously build up some kind of a trust with someone that makes the decisions. I think that's and doing a good job. Obviously, to be a coach in NHL, you need to be best of the best, right? So no, right now there are no European coaches, and again, I try to challenge a little bit, because there's a lot of good European coaches. I coached against them. I coached against NHL coaches. When we won the World Championships 2017 against Canada in the final, for example, John Cooper was on the Canadian bench. I mean, I coached against those guys in tournaments and stuff like that. So I've been fortunate to coach them against some really good, Finnish coaches, Swedish coaches, Russian coaches, Czech coaches. I mean, they're really good, solid coaches, and I think they can also, if an NHL organization will take that step, I think you can get in a little bit what Tappara did this year, a little bit different kind of hockey, maybe challenging, not playing the same way as everyone else, maybe get a little different approach to it. And again, I was really determined of making this happen in Finland, because you have ups and downs in the season. It's easy to start mistrusting or not trusting what you started, but somewhere along the line, because the organization was so solid and so supportive in what we were doing, you saw the result of it too, and there was a lot of people that really appreciated it, because we played it so different than we're successful with in the past, So, and I think, there will be some European coaches that will get an opportunity, that an organization will look outside the box and give them opportunity. Again,
well, I've heard your name come up. Like, when NHL openings, there have been a couple times, this can't be a surprise to you, I heard it on NHL Network, your name is mentioned. Like, have you been interviewed for NHL jobs?
Yes, I have. From, I would say, and head coaching jobs, of course, also some assistant jobs. There's a lot about timing as well. Who's available, who's out there at the same time as you interviewing, maybe some other, big name gets available, and suddenly things changes and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of a timing situation. Us European coaches, and especially the attractive guys that has offers from different organizations, Europe's. I signed my contract with Tappara already in November the year before. Their recruiting season is a little bit different versus here. You have to wait until maybe a month or so before the season starts in the NHL organization. So it's a little bit of a contract situation too. Right. So the really attractive coaches in Europe, they get signed up pretty quickly. That was another deal that was attractive with Tappara, that I do have an NHL out with Tappara. That was a big deal for me, and same time signing a long-term deal with Tappara.
Do a lot of leagues have that for their players or for their coaches, where like, hey, if the NHL comes, we get it, like go, and that gives us more exposure too, or?
Yeah, in Europe you have an agreement. The European leagues have an agreement with NHL, so they can. There's some rules that need to be followed, but more or less, if we have a contract with the player and NHL wants them and signs them, they can take them up to a certain date. And that, for example, we had Konsta Helenius that signed with Buffalo a couple of weeks ago, drafted 14th overall this year. He was actually contracted by us, but because the NHL team wants to keep him, he's a first rounder, he can stay with Buffalo. So there's always situations where European leagues have signed an agreement with NHL that NHL can come in and take some of our players. So a little different with coaches. It's not under the same umbrella.
If they don't stay on the NHL team and they're 17, 18 years old, can they come back and play? Because I think one of our goalies plays for Joker at one of the Utah hockey teams.
Yeah.
So is that I'm just a little confused on how it works, because I know how it works. If you're 18, you can go back to your junior team. They don't assign you to the AHL. Is it the same thing? Can they send them back to Europe, or do they have to go to the A?
Just to bring up this example again, so if you draft the first round in NHL draft, CBA, what it states in CBA, or the agreement, I should say, between the National Ice Hockey Association and NHL, if you draft the first round and go in and try out for the NHL team and don't make the NHL team, the team can still assign them to the American League. But if you're second round and lower, they have to. If they don't make the NHL team in the training camp, they have to send them back to Europe.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of difference depending where you're drafted. But there's always deals that happens, situation happens. If you look at our defensive core, a lot of them have NHL experience, have been exposed to NHL coming back. We have some younger guys that are drafted that will take the step and all that stuff, and we need to understand where in the pecking order we're at. But there's a very, very good hockey in Europe. I feel like we're producing a lot of good players. Obviously, there's some players that they're coming back, either playing in NHL and coming back, So there's a lot of excitement with hockey. The hockey interest in Finland is number 1, 2, and 3 when it comes to sports in Finland. It's hockey. Like they love their hockey. So that was interesting for me too. Versus in Sweden, I think it's a little 50-50 between soccer and hockey. I think soccer is probably a little bit interest is a little bit higher, but and other hot spots in Europe. I mean, I think Germany is gaining huge momentum right now with what they're doing with their pro league. Building brand new arenas and everything else. Czech Republic is building a pretty good league there, and can offer enough money for good recruitment of players outside Czech Republic. For example, there's other leagues in Europe. Swedish league has been very solid for many years. I have a huge fan interest. If you have an opportunity to come and watch a game in Europe, because the fan interest is unbelievable.
Oh yeah, I have every intention of coming and catching a couple games this year.
Yeah, and you're more welcome to come to our games for sure.
Yeah.
Because it's especially the derbies, but we're averaging close to 10,000 in our games, and some teams in Europe, for example, Bern making the average of 15,000. You have Berlin, for example. I think it's 16,000 or something like that. They're averaging. So, playing in front of more or less. If you look at the soccer games in Europe, that's kind of the same in hockey. Like that's the kind of atmosphere. They're singing along the whole games, and it's a fun atmosphere to work with them for sure.
Yeah, I went to my first European soccer game this year, and it was pretty crazy. Frankfurt and somebody else. It was fun though. It was a lot of excitement and. Yeah, I've seen those with, I got to watch like Nick and those guys play the last couple of years. Like I'll catch a couple of their games on TV or stream it and just listening to the crowd into it the whole time. Sounds like you'd be exhausted after those games, just even as a fan. What do you think about Utah getting an NHL team? Is this something you ever saw coming? Like, and what kind of impact do you think that's going to have on Utah?
Well, I'm as excited as anyone else because I feel like I'm part of the state. So I'm super excited about Utah getting an opportunity to have it in state instead of traveling somewhere else and catch NHL games. They can actually just go downtown Salt Lake and watch games. Yeah, I'm super excited about it. What a great opportunity for the whole population of the state of Utah to watch NHL game on a daily basis. And I think we talked about youth hockey and everything else. I think youth hockey is going to gain obviously momentum of this as well. I think it's going to be more ice facilities going to be built. Obviously, more kids want to play the sport. Hopefully, the organization realizing this and want to pump in resources into youth hockey in the state, because that's a great way of making sure you have fans coming to the games. Because if you start playing hockey, you either become a hockey player or fans or both. So. And then they can, obviously people are going to come and buy the product of hockey. So if you look at, I've also been down in Texas areas, and I see the impact of Dallas Stars down there when they moved from Minnesota, and they built all those hockey centers around Dallas, and now you see great players coming out of the state of Texas.
Yeah.
Obviously Gretzky moving to California, what a great boom of interest in that state. So hopefully if it can gain the momentum here in Utah, which I know it will, and there's a lot of good hockey people here that should be getting involved in this, and hopefully what we talked about before, that they can have a unified front of working together and making sure we create the best environment for our youth here, and look beyond the squabble that happened 10, 15 years ago. I think you have a huge opportunity in producing great players.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's kind of been the template, right? Like even if you look at what happened in Vegas just recently, they went from 450 registered hockey players to 4,000 in 6 years. And we know we're getting another rink immediately. We know there's a rink being built in St. George. We know there's another rink being built just outside of Park City. And those are going to be done within the next 18 months. So I think like maybe 18 years from now, you're going to see a first-round pick out of Utah.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think it's a question of that. I think, again, and they want to stay in those formative years in the state and play here versus going somewhere else where the better opportunities. So, I'm super thrilled for Utah. I obviously personally interested, and maybe come back and retire. I can watch some NHL hockey here as well, and I
don't want you to come back retired. I want you to be a coach on the team. Rikard, what's your biggest accomplishment as a coach?
Oh boy,
I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm trying to get you a job with our new NHL team. Tell me your top 3 accomplishments.
Well, obviously winning with the national team is unbelievable, but just representing the national team.
And you beat John Cooper, who's really good friends with our owner, Ryan Smith. Just wanted to throw that out there. Winning with the national team, again, representing the country is tremendously, privileged for me to be part of. We only won Junior World Championship, believe it or not, twice, and I've been part of when we won 12 in Calgary. That was a huge momentum swing, I think, for Swedish hockey period. Was a big thing, but then other things I'm really proud. I'm proud of what we did here in Utah. I just wish I could have been staying a lot longer, but I can't clone myself and be in 2 different places at the same time. I'm super proud of some players that, again, I'm reconnected with here and there that I've been part of their lives and see them excel into what they're at. But there's a lot of mixed emotions, a lot of privileges as a coach to be part of not just winning and losing, because that's the little tip of the iceberg we're seeing, but be part of these young men and even women. I coach some women as well, and see them have success in their lives. That's a big accomplishment for me. Yeah, that's I talk about it all the time. For me, as a coach, we won some games, we lost some games. Looking back, I remember some of the losses, sure, but what I really remember are the kids, the parents. I had great times with the parents. Made friends for life with a lot of them. I get invited to weddings and college graduations and college games, and just knowing that you had that impact on people. And then I still have guys that I coached 10 years ago that just reached out to me the other day. These kids are Tegan's age. They're like 25, 26 years old, and they're like, "Hey, let's do an alumni game. Let's get everybody together. Let's get the whole old team back together." And it's just funny to look back at the impact that you can have as a coach on these people, and whether it's at the house level or whether it's at the national level, like, you're still having that same impact on raising young people into being adults. And hopefully that's the part where you make the most impact, right?
Yeah, and I think when you're looking at, especially coaching at my level in NHL or whatever, I think a big thing when you get up to our level is the X and O's. You have a plan. Obviously, you need to adapt depending on what kind of team you have and all that stuff. The X and O's are down there. You have the support. You know how the hockey part works. But the biggest thing for me is the leadership. How do you treat people? That's a huge thing for me. And I think sometimes it's being missed. I mean, someone missing the boat. It doesn't matter what level they're at. If you treat the people really well around yourself, I think you can be even harder with them. I think it means a lot for those people that you're around. So the leadership part, man, I'm trying to educate myself. I mean, right now in the summer, I go fishing, and I actually went up to Strawberry yesterday. I caught some good fish up in Strawberry. I go fishing, but I also trying to educate myself. So I do a lot of research how I can become a better leader, because that's a huge part for me. You're talking about a privilege, but there's also a responsibility that you have. You can also crush dreams, and sometimes that's in our level. Obviously, we have to make decisions of who we're going to keep, who we're going to play, and all that stuff. But you can still treat a person well, even though that you may have to make those decisions. That I'll take pride in that, in the sense of the leadership part of it, because X and O's, I think at a certain level you always have it, but have those players every time they're walking in the locker room I'm involved in, they feel welcome there. They really feel welcome, and they want to do stuff versus don't want to. Because I've been in locker rooms when I played that I don't want to go in there, and I love the sport. I love to be in the locker room, period. But there's also some environments you don't want to be part of. And I think that's a success part for me, the biggest success you have. I think I'm pretty good at creating that environment in every locker room of we want to do something and we want to do it together because we picked the team sport, right? So the leadership part is huge for me as well.
Yeah, it's hugely important. And to build that culture, I was lucky. I always had kids that just love the sport as much as I love the sport and love to play it. And somehow they made practices more fun. They just went in with the right attitude. I was lucky. I think I raised my kids that way. I listened to my daughter going through when she went through basic training, and she would talk about, what some of the challenges they went through. And she's like, today we get to do this. We get to do this 6-mile hike with a backpack, and we can go straight. And if we tear, like, we go through these bushes and stuff, we're not on trails. And if they tear our pants or whatever, they'll just give us more pants. And she just, her attitude about the whole thing with, hey, this is a great opportunity. Not many people get to just, be this rugged or do these things or play with $1 million tanks or, all this stuff that, I know you watch movies and people think that part sucks. Yeah. But if you look at it right, and if you have the right culture and you have the right, and sometimes it's one player and sometimes it's two players, sometimes it's the coach. And if we knew how to create it right, then we'd win every year, right? Every year we'd be champions, but there's a lot of balance that comes to it. It's fun to man. I could listen to you talk all day, and I'd love to learn more about leadership from you. I absorb that stuff like crazy too. It's important in my real world as a captain of a fire department, just trying to.
How about I'll send you some of the research, because the research is out there. And it's just if the willingness to find it and willingness to go outside the traditional hockey box, because the way I was coached, that's not the way that really. I mean, there's some good stuff. Don't get me wrong. They build a lot of character and stuff, but the research is out there. Just do the research when it comes to leadership. How do you get people to work together? I'm super intrigued by it because when I start coaching again, I think we're all doing that. It's so easy to put the whistle on, and I played, so I know, right? Yeah. And then if a player comes up and asks you a question, you tell them exactly what they should do because I know. And then you're black and white, right? We need to be black and white. This is the easier world to live in. And the older I get, the more I understand that, hey, listen, maybe I can learn something from the players too by asking questions. What's so wrong for someone in my position to ask questions to my assistant coaches, to staff, to players, and by getting that information that you maybe didn't get, now we can make a more well-rounded decision, because at the end of the day, I need to make decisions, right? And I think I learned a lot from myself, but also doing research, but also being in an environment and trying different new stuff, not just being in the same spot every year and doing the same thing. Plus I get bored, but, trying new stuff and trying to be challenging, be in a challenging environment with the staff, the coaches and the players. Yeah,
the best leaders are humble, they're vulnerable, they're willing to ask questions and willing to say, I don't know.
So you've done the research? Well,
I've done a lot of research. I've read a lot. Well, my wife and daughter won't let me say that I've read a book because I listen to all of them. But I've listened to a lot of books, and then obviously through the fire department, I go through tons of leadership training, tons. And that's basically what it comes down to, is like, just be vulnerable and listen to people talk. You don't have to know the answer. But in my world, like my hockey world, that's fine. But in the paramedic world, you're supposed to know everything. You're supposed to say, I know exactly what to do. But there's actually more, there's more strength in saying, you know what, I don't know. Let's kind of take a poll. Like, I'm going to make the final decision, but am I missing anything? Is there anything anybody else is seeing? And there's no, if it's okay to do that as a paramedic in a life and death situation, which most of them are, and if it's okay to do it then, it's definitely okay to do it as a coach. It's definitely okay to take a second.
And you brought up a great point there, Jay, that it gets to a point where a coach needs to make a decision, right? Like, even on the bench, it needs to be a quick decision. But I think and obviously being a paramedic, you have to make life and death decisions. But until that point, obviously, you need to learn and try to be better. And suddenly when you're making that decision, hopefully you're making better decisions, because every decision we make is not always the right decision, right? But I think you're making a better decision because until that point when you actually have to make a decision, you actually listen to people, you learn from different perspectives. We have something for, just bring up an example with coach trying to be listening. After I've been working with neuroscience, a few people, but also with some in the real world, like you said, life and death situations, and U.S. Marines, for example, after they go on a mission, they have something called after action review, which I'm sure you have heard of.
A hot wash, yep.
We do it after every game. Like, it's not a life and death decision, of course not. But it's also important for me to hear from the player's point of view. So what I do is the day after, we're sitting down and I said, okay, guys, what happened? So it's a flat organization. I sit down. I'm not over them. I'm sitting down and say, okay, what happened? So I can hear their point of view. And obviously, based on what they're saying, I have my truth. Obviously, I'm the coach, and I have the video and everything ready to go, and I get him some information and further and get better and all that stuff. But before that, I can hear from some of the guys, and you'd be surprised. They're not dummies.
Right.
They know what's going on, and you get some feedback back from those guys. But also, by them having the voice, they feel responsibility of the group, right? They feel a responsibility of, next time I need to step up even more because I just raised my voice in this situation, right? So they feel even more responsible when we're stepping on the ice afterwards. So we have a completely flat organization. Just we have no ranks, exactly what it is in the U.S. Marines. Everyone can say anything from other perspective, can even have a dialogue within the locker room. And then going to get to the point later on that I have to make a decision. Obviously, I got to make sure who's playing with whom and all that stuff. But I think the players feel a value in that, in the sense of I am responsible, I have an ownership in this. And those are the key things if we want to have a successful team, I feel.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And someday we're going to have to talk about, we'll have to have you on another episode or something, because I think it's important what you just said as far as who's going to play with whom and where and when. It's not like it used to be. It's not all black and white. It's not, a lot of people here are under the impression that you just bring in every superstar forward you get and you just put them all on the ice at the same time, instead of having, like the old saying, it takes a lot of tradesmen to build a house, right? You got to have the plumber, you got to have the electrician, so you got to have the plugger, you got to have the guy that's going to be strong in front of the net, you got to have somebody to win face-offs. Someday we'll have to break all that down, because I think what I'm finding is a lot of people are using this show to learn about coaching and to learn about, because they're getting into hockey more, and this is their resource.
And I've been in that position. I brought in all the superstars for World Cup, for example, 2016. That was my first job for the Swedish team as a head coach, and I can pick anyone from the NHL, like more or less. So I've been there, and now how am I going to find a role for everyone? Bringing all those superstars. First of all, you have to turn superstars away from playing on that team. How do you do that? And secondly, now when you have all the superstars in the locker room, who's going to play and with whom? And how much time are they going to get, and all that stuff. So I've been in those situations, and I always refer back to, the well-grounded of getting as much information, but having a dialogue, discuss, talk, explain. Not always the explanation is going to be something the player wants to hear, but I think they appreciate you taking your time of explaining your thought process and how you land in different goals. I think the player is going to have a better understanding in the process of what you're doing, and I think you have more buy-in in that sense. So I've been in that, and obviously a very short period of time, but it was an unbelievable experience, and what a great challenge for me as my first head coaching job with the national team is to bring on the World Cup.
That was wow. Yeah, that's incredible. Rikard, thank you so much for your time. That's about the length that people will listen to a podcast. I'd love to have you on again. I'd love to hear that you get hired on and one of your next. I know you're excited about coaching in Finland, but I'd love to see you come back to Utah. I'd love to see you be part of our NHL team, and I'd love to have your influence back on this market. The influence you had in those 5 years, you put a lot of our kids into NCAA programs that probably wouldn't have been there. And I hope you realize that, because we realize that, and we appreciate it. I know they appreciate it, obviously. So if we can get a guy like you to stick around and coach more in Utah, and I know it's going to take the NHL to do it, because that's got to be your next step, then hopefully it's with us.
Would love to. I would love to be part of this.
All right. That's Rikard Grönborg. I'm Jay Stevens, and that is the Utah Puck Report. I want to give a special thanks to Chipman Roofing. These are hockey people supporting the hockey community. It's Chipman Roofing. For all your roofing needs, just check out chipmanroofing.com. And if you like what you hear on the podcast, please leave a review, leave a rating. Wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure you give us a rating. Like to check out KSLSports.com as well. There's going to be more hockey on there. As more hockey comes up, it's going to be always right there, KSLSports.com. Big thanks to Madison Miller for putting up with us and making this thing work.